Here I have a couple of cooperative decks, the goal of which is to get the maximum possible force drain for the light side. The objectives here pretty much need to be the ones that were chosen. Reason being, Alderaan needs to be blown away. Then the reverse side of 0 Hour does give you a +1 to your any force drain after your first force drain at a battleground on a turn. No real other objectives do that. And so dark side's going to help the light side do this by giving them lots of activation, helping them sort their force pile. And the light side wants to get out the Lars moisture farm as fast as possible. So these either way you win and you swindled me cards are pretty nice for getting extra activation. If each player has one, that's 6 force, because when you choose, you force your opponent to choose whether to retrieve or activate. And if they choose activate, then they activate 2 and you get 4. And if both players do that, you each get 6. So the light side already has all this force. 24 on the first turn. I guess make that 26. Then the dark side is sorting the used pile to put the most useful cards on top. The idea here is to try to get all of the cards that have a high deploy cost, get those in hand first, and start deploying those out. And then later on, when there's less force in the force pile, deploy the lower cost ones. Because eventually you're going to have only a few cards in the reserve deck, not much force to work with. So dark side's getting a lot of systems out, some sights. The systems aren't really necessary; they're just for activation. Other than the Tatooine system, which will come out in a while. And light side did get the moisture farm. It's off to the right there. It's kind of hidden behind the pause and play button, or pause and fast forward and rewind buttons. Dark side's going to do a few point mans here to get the key cards into hand, while also sending back other cards they actually have force to work with. Unlike the dark side one, I am going to play some Sabak here to get the light side some cards. Mostly to have cards in their life force, but there's 2 lightsabers that the light side can actually use. One is actually the dark saber, and the other's just a standard dark Jedi lightsaber. So there comes the farm. 36 force, that's plenty. We got to flip the objective. That's one of the first goals. And usually I like to do that with the rebel trooper who's going to stay there anyways, but I already had Wedge in hand, and he's a rebel, and he's got a snow speeder, so it's not too difficult to move him over to Tatooine in one turn. It's kind of an expensive docking bay transit, 3 force, but it's 3 force regardless of how many characters you have moving. R2D2 adds an icon here. That adds another icon for each side. There's quite a few cards that add to force drains. One is Philo Gandish. She adds 2 at an opponent's docking bay. Problem is, well, the docking bay I wanted to use would have been the dark side Tatooine docking bay. But problem with that one is that there's no scomp link, so R2D2 can't add an icon there. And the other thing is, at a docking bay, you can't use the text on the light side version of established control secure route. So Philo adds 2 and secure route adds 2, so that's kind of a wash. And there is a card, it adds to your force drains at docking bays, but it's an Admiral's Order, and you have to have it be at a docking bay, so you can't use secure route. And also, there's only one icon at the docking bay, so that wouldn't really work either. Plus, wouldn't get the +1 force drain bonus for it being a remote planet. So, anyways, there's a bunch of opportunity costs, but I think I chose the best combination, or at least no worse combination to get the maximum drain. So yeah, there's definitely some cards I didn't use because they only work at a docking bay instead of next to a docking bay. And the fact that the light side starts out with an extra icon here ends up being a big deal once we get out the Bomar Monk, because he adds icons to equalize him to both sides. That's why this pretty much has to take place on Tatooine, is because we're going to want to add dark side icons for an even bigger drain. Clouds are going to be important later. We're playing Sabak here to get light side these dark Jedi lightsabers. And force draining, and anytime a player loses a dark saber from hand, the other player can steal it into hand. Since there's a card later on, oh, actually, I already have him in hand. This guy here, he adds 1 to a force drain if you have at least 10 cards in your lost pile. And the reason we need the Death Star blown away is because she adds 1 to force drains when the Death Star has blown away Alderaan. The TIE fighter over there is not really necessary, but he helps drain a little bit faster. Tessic will add 1 to force drains where there's a non-unique alien. And he's only here because he's a Mandalorian, so I needed somebody to play the Darksaber on. Mace Windu is going to have a lightsaber later. A lot of the lightsabers I'm putting on top of the force pile when I sort things out. That way, when I deploy cards, the lightsabers go back to the use pile. They can deploy for free later, or most of them can deploy for free. And I'm putting the cards with deploy cost on the bottom. That way, after I deploy a bunch of cards, I can draw the cards with an actual deploy cost. So Leia also adds an icon here. Playing some Savak to get more weapons. Looks like both sides had a lightsaber. Dark side loses on purpose, just to get the weapon over into the light side's deck. More force to activate, more force to use. And one of those needs to come out eventually. So Han, he eventually needs to land. C-3PO's dumping Darksaber's back, trying to get useful cards here. Dangerous time getting that used pile, or I should say force pile sorted. And just trying to deploy the high cost characters now. And since I was the one who played a Dangerous Time on a different window, I know exactly which cards are where. So like, okay, let's see, I have to spend this much force and make sure I save 9 left so I can draw this many cards or whatever number it ends up being. So we'll have an interrupt that'll help us with T-47s. Luke's gonna come out. Eventually he'll get a lightsaber. Another interrupt that will allow clones to help us out. So Han's landing and getting off. Move the snowspeeder over, make sure we get Fen Rao out, leave Wedge on. It was so small, it's kind of hard to click on, but Wedge is going to add 1 to a force drain when he's on the snowspeeder. And Fen Rao is the Darksaber, so he's going to add a force drain. Add to the force drain. Yeah, so this whole time I've been thinking about, is there a docking bay way to do it, force draining at a docking bay? But I think that's actually one less than the way I did it here. Because you can use Philo Gandish, but you can't use secure route because secure route only works at adjacent non-dock. You deploy at a docking bay, it gives bonus at adjacent docking bays. You have to use a non-episode 1 docking bay, so you get the 1 bonus there, but you lose the 1 bonus for a remote planet. And then since the docking bay has 1 less force icon than the Lars Moisture Farm, which means the Omar Monk is adding less force, it would actually be 1 less to do at a docking bay. Just a few more characters to get out. He's got to be there because BB-8 adds to a force drain when with a resistance leader. And he adds with any resistance character, but BB-8 specifically needs a leader. So there's only a couple cards left in the deck that I need to get out. Most of the ones that are left are free, but not all of them. So Alderon's blown away. They only needed, I believe, an 8 to do it, and they got a 10. And I'm checking to see where everything is in the deck. I think because of how I did things, yep, that's a card I'm going to need. The dark set's going to help out by allowing us to retrieve that. Of course, if Lightside really needed to retrieve something, they could have Luke hop on the Snowspeeder and be piloting that. Then there's one more card that I need to get back into my hand. That'll add to our force drains as well. So I got to be careful that I don't C3PO too early, since this is the card that was retrieved, the one in the reserve deck. I want to get that into hand eventually, but I don't want to stop the dark side player from playing You Swindled Me, because You Swindled Me requires there to be at least one card in the reserve deck. Otherwise, they can't choose between activating force and not. So all these lightsabers coming down. A remote planet adds 1 to force drains at episode 1 Tatooine battleground sites. And I don't think it says nope, but there are six force icons at the site here for each side, 6 and 6, because the Omar Monk, there he is. He equalizes the force icons. This guy, he's like a moisture farmer leader. He's going to add 2 to my force drains because I have a hydroponic station and evaporator there. Now, BB-8's going to add 1. All right, so now, since I don't need to use any more force, I want to put that card on the top. We're going to draw a few cards since I know the last one I need is down below. Yep, that's it. This is absolutely right. I can C3PO to get that card off my deck. And this top card is not the one I want. The one below it is. So Darkseid can just force drain for 1. Now I can C3PO, get the last card I need. They're going to drain it for 4. Because we need to get 10 cards in the lost pile. There's 8. And just throw that back in the deck. It's kind of funny to use a card and see all Darkseid cards in your reserve deck there. Okay, so here's the big turn. Gonna see 3PO just because. Now, you got to drain to activate the objective here. So we drain to activate the objective. And now subsequent force drains are going to be +1. Tatooine force drains are +1 because of the speeders. Also +1 because Han and Leia are together. The clones add +1 to the force drain. This adds 2 to my next force drain by placing a senator there. So the initial drain is going to be 25. So all these guys are adding there, plus clouds. If you control once per turn, can add 1 to a force drain related sites. That's going to add 1 to it. So 26, 27. Then we got a bunch of lightsabers. There's a lot of bonuses here initially. That made it 25, but now it's just a bunch of lightsabers. So dark Jedi lightsaber, Jedi lightsaber. I had to put the dark Jedi lightsaber on Han Solo. I guess I didn't have to, but it's easier to have fewer characters. It costs 4 force to put them on there. Same thing with the Jedi lightsaber that I put on Cara Dune, since she's an Alderaanian because of him. Oh, I already saw the total. The total was 38. So all sorts of different things made it 38, mostly lightsabers, plus 6 icons there at the site. We ended up with 38 total force loss. So I'm fairly sure that's the most, as of Virtual Set 21, that's the most you can get, because I think it has to be on Tatooine because of the Bomar monks equalizing the force icons. I guess, well, you could. It's not working in Gemp right now, but Walkling would add 1 if with an Ewok, but the docking bay transit isn't working with Walkling, even though it should. It's an effect that can move like a character, so I guess you can get 39. So I would have put a Walkling in here if it had been coded properly, but I just think I was told that that's something that nobody's really tested before trying to get a Walkling off Endor, so no worries there. I just wanted to mention that is one thing that I tried to do in other decks that didn't work out, trying to get the Walkling off Endor. So yeah, let me know if you think there's ways to get more than 38 in a single drain for the light side. Maybe there's some really kind of weird card stealing thing I haven't thought of. But in any case, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. If you have any tips on what I could have done to add to that 38 other than the Walkling, I suppose, please do say so in the comments. Thanks.